welcome back. Hey, people out there, you're looking at houses, you're looking for guidance. And that first step is so key because you got to make the right decisions for yourself, and you do need that guide. Ryan Leopold joins us. Ryan, welcome back.
Great. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah. We've worked, you and I have worked together now for many years, different projects. Some people are, these people are still first-time homebuyers. They're still coming in with big questions. And, you're working with a lot of clients and helping them kind of not just get into that mortgage, but also kind of that pre-mortgage stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not just pre-approval. What are some of those biggest tips you're talking with people now about those with first-time homebuyers?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is home buyers are coming into the market and they really don't know where to start. They don't have any basis for a starting point. So, half the time when I talk to them and say, well, what's important to you? What do you want to learn about? What kind of questions you have? And they don't even know the questions to ask because they're so new to the process. So Heather and I were actually talking today and say the great content would be just giving people an idea of where do we start? Where is the basis of a first-time home buyer, whether they're looking to buy in 30 days or 8 to 12 months out? What do you do first? And I think that's a really great topic for buyers to really just get a grasp of before they enter the market.
And because I think most people, which is probably not the right thing to do, is just start looking at houses. Now, granted, that's the carrot, right? Mm-hmm. But there's some, as far as the financing side, I know people who've gotten carried away with, well, that's the house I want, because they're looking at 600 instead of where they showed at 400. And, they can get themselves in trouble. How do you help people avoid that?
Yeah, and I actually just talked to a client this morning, and he is brand new. So it was actually perfect. And I said, well, let's start here. Before we even have the lender meeting, why don't you just sit with your wife at home and go through your budget? Let's get a good idea of how much money you make. Get a good idea of what your fixed expenses are, like the, life insurance car payments and credit card payments and student loans. Let's get a good feel of how much comes in every month, how much goes out, and let's get a feel for how much you're comfortable spending for a total mortgage payment. Let's be the basis, because it's coming from your own real numbers and your own kind of investigation. So once you get a feel for that number, then I think the next logical step is to meet with a lender. I know a lot of people go through other processes first. I think it's crucial to sit down with a lender and just understand how the process works and understand what your options are.
There's and starting with that budget I think is so key, because, and people don't get this, a bank will still loan you more money than you can afford. Mm-hmm. They will still give you more money. They don't know everything that's going on in your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. They know what's on a credit report. And so knowing internally what you can afford is better than having a bank say, well, you can afford this, because people get caught up in those bigger numbers.
And that's really what the process is. So the first time we ever meet with a client, I always encourage people to meet with their lender face-to-face at all possible. And if that's not possible, technology is so great today that you can do GoToMeetings, you can do Skype. There's all kinds of different things you can do to actually get to know your lender and make sure they understand what's important to you, and you kind of have the opportunity to ask them questions. So, once you kind of have that budget together, sit with a lender who's going to understand your situation, because everybody's situation is different and unique. And everything about the lending side of things is understanding, based on your situation, here's where you are today, here's where you want to be, and here's the most efficient way to get from A to B. And then it comes down to understanding loan programs, positives and negatives to different loan programs, what you need to qualify, what you actually qualify for compared to what you're comfortable with. I think there's really is that first meeting with the lender is crucial.
And, I think not only meeting with them, but that actual knowing that they're a guide for you, because inevitably hundreds of questions are going to cruise through your mind. And your uncle, the plumber, is going to have an opinion. And your dad, who bought a house 10 years ago, is going to have an opinion. But sometimes you don't just take, as I was talking about earlier with, like going skiing in dangerous areas, you don't just take anybody's advice because they've skied before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think along those lines, too, is there's still a lot of people in our industry. You got to meet with somebody. You got to get to know them. You got to know that they have your best interests at heart, and they educate you about your options, so that way you can make informed decisions. That is so key today, because like you mentioned before, is technically people can get still qualified for more than what they're comfortable with. So let's make sure we figure out what you're comfortable with. And then after that, once you get a good feel for how much am I going to need as a down payment, what does my credit look like today, how much money do I make and how much money goes out each month, what am I qualified for versus what my payment could be, then whether you're looking to buy in a month or 12 months, then start looking for properties online. Start, that carrot that you talked about, getting an idea out there of what's available in your price range. And don't look at stuff that's above what you said it was.
It's so much nice. It's funny, and I think it's really hard, and especially when you have a husband and wife maybe who are buying their first house, because inevitably one's going to go, well, God, we want the bigger home, and one's going to be more financially prudent, and you end up in kind of a tussle, I guess you could say. And so knowing what that number is before you start looking, I think it's crucial.
It's one of probably the biggest mistake I see people make is they fall in love with this $450,000 house as they're playing online. They come in and go, I want my payment to be $1,200 a month. Well, unless you're putting 50% down, your payments aren't going to be $1,200 a month.
I don't have any money down.
So I think that's a crucial step. And then after that, your lender's really going to coach you on what you need to have set aside as far as documentation and some rules to make sure that you follow as you're kind of going through the pre-approval process and as you're out, looking for homes. So get stuff put together, and some of the things you're going to need to have are going to be pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements with all pages, tax returns with all schedules, asset statements with all pages, and just collect them every single month and start organizing a file and have that stuff set aside. So when a lender asks for them, you have them at your fingertips so you can give them the information they need to help you.
Because you have to have all of it. I know you've seen it, I've seen it, where people say, well, here's my bank statement. Well, you're missing page 4. And I think it's important for a home buyer to realize that most lenders don't like asking for page 4 of the bank statement any more than you like going to get it. But the reality is every one of these little pieces of paper is needed. You have to have it.
And get them up front. A good lender is going to collect everything up front, and if there's any challenges or any problems that we need to fix, we want to fix them on day one before you even find a home, as opposed to 3 months down the road, now you've fallen in love with a home, you've made an offer, and you're under contract. Now we're scrambling to fix problems. So let's fix those problems up front. After that, really, then you can start meeting with an agent when you become a little bit more serious.
The fun part.
That is. The shopping part is the fun part. But let's get prepared and let's get organized so that way you can take that next step with confidence. And then the last phase of this is making sure once you're in what I call the pre-approval process, that you've met with a lender, you're pre-approved, you're out there shopping for properties, there's 2 or 3 or 4 do not do kind of things. And I've seen this happen, so I want to reiterate this a couple times. Don't go and make any major purchases that you're going to finance. Don't buy a car. Don't finance anything major. Okay. Don't pay off debt or put any large deposits in the bank. Make sure you talk to your lender about it before you do anything major like that. And this is surprising to say, but don't change jobs. Do not change jobs before you talk to your lender, and make sure you have a strategy to make sure you're still approved in a couple weeks when you actually do find that home.
You mentioned the large deposits, and I think a lot of people struggle with that because, well, they're probably getting large deposits potentially as gifts from people. A lot of this money is coming in, and you have to just be careful because, as you said, you talk to your lender first because you just have to source these things. You have to know where that $10,000 came from, because people don't, lenders don't want to know that, hey, you borrowed $10,000 for your down payment that's now a new debt. It's about knowing where everything came from.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, do not take anything for granted. Don't think it's not that big a deal, because in the lending environment we're in these days, everything kind of is a big deal, and you have to make sure that everything is done for a very specific reason, a very specific purpose. And if you do anything weird like borrow money from a credit card, give random gift from friends or parents and put them in your account, lenders don't like to see that. They want to see that whatever money's in there is normal deposits.
I would sure love if my friends gave me random financial money deposits.
Well, let me make sure I clarify this. Okay, so Ben and I go on a trip together. I pay for golf on one specific day. You give me $300 that I deposit in there because I put it all on my credit card.
You wanted the miles.
The miles. You gave me the $300 back. I randomly put it in my account. I think it's no big deal. And now we're like, okay, we have to trace and track that money. Now you're having to backtrack and prove why you just randomly put in $300 into your account. It seems ridiculous. It seems arbitrary, but it happens, and that's the reality of the world we live in. I don't care if it's a first-time home buyer or someone who's bought 7 properties before.
And sometimes
it's just a reality.
Sometimes it's hard to prove. I mean, I don't know if the lender is going to accept your scorecard for that day to figure out how much those greens fees were.
Sure.
How do people, when somebody is pre-approved, some people have to go about doing these things. Sometimes you're gonna get a deposit. Sometimes you might get a job offer during that pre-approval. And it's not that you can't do it. It's you just need to make sure you're on the same page with the lender, the person who may be about to give you $300,000-$500,000 to go buy a house.
I've been doing this for 14 years, and what I've found is the number one most important thing to this business in working with buyers is keeping engagement and having a relationship. Not only a relationship with the lender to their clients, but the clients to their lender, that we're working together to make sure that we still get you from where you are today to where you want to be, and just communicate, stay in touch, let people know when changes happen. And, our job is to make this process smooth, uneventful, and as stress-free as possible.
And, that pre-approval letter is only as good until something changes. People think, oh, I'm fine. I'm good to go. But, sometimes it's about those changes.
Yeah.
When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. There may be people out there who aren't first-time home buyers, but are still looking for houses. And sometimes what you need to do to move up, maybe buy your next home, are a little bit different than what Ryan just talked about. We're going to continue. My name is Ben Brashen. You're listening to Brashenomics.